Opera House, the South Carolina Philharmonic, supplements manufacturer A.J. Lanigan, Leon Jones Insurance, and the Mitchell House and Gardens. And now, here's the host of Health, Wealth, and Happiness, Gary Posick.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Health, Wealth, and Happiness. Here's a rundown of today's program. My first guest joins us via the phone as he does the fourth Wednesday of the month. He is Rusty Brassey. Rusty is the owner of ScoreNavigator.com and is a sponsor of this program. Today, in keeping with the holiday, we're going to be talking about your credit and shopping during the holiday and how it affects your credit, especially if you use your credit card, obviously. From 1:30 to 1:45 each Wednesday, joining us via the phone is Don Schaefer, who's a travel expert. He always has great advice about travel and how to save money in travel. My final guest of the day will be Susan O'Kane with Riverbank Zoo, talking about a tradition here in Columbia, the 28th annual Lights Before Christmas at Riverbank Zoo. So I hope you'll stay tuned for the entire program, and welcome back, Rusty Brassey. Good to have you here.
Hi, Gary. It's good to be back.
No doubt about the fact that this is the busiest retail season of the year. It's make or break for a lot of retailers. If they don't make it in the next 23 shopping days, they ain't going to make it. And so many people, Rusty, I think, get in trouble with credit card spending because it's so easy to do. They overspend, and they basically, quite honestly, spend most of the next calendar year paying off the shopping that they do during the next 23 days.
Well, you're right, Gary, and I don't know if you say fortunately or unfortunately, but it kind of goes together here that a lot of the people that did this last year still haven't paid off. They're bargaining, go out and shop for the holidays from last year. And so they don't have as much room this year. But what's going to happen for them, Gary, is they're going to go in and they're going to walk into these department stores and they're going to offer them some sort of a discount if they apply for credit that day. And chances are that if their balances are still pretty high where they can't use their credit cards, they're actually just going to get an inquiry that's going to take their score down, and they're not going to get the credit they're applying for anyways.
And this is also the time of the year where people will receive in the mail what they think is a really good deal. Here's an opportunity to lower the amount of interest that you're paying on your credit card. Get out from underneath that 21% or higher credit score and get it down to 18% or 15%, or 0% for the first 6 months. Sounds like a good deal, but as you've explained on previous shows, many times all the glitters is not gold, and the effect that new credit card has on your credit score ain't always so good.
No, it's not, Gary, because what happens is on the newer lines of credit, the ratio of which your balance to high credit is more severe than of something that you had, 4 or 5 years ago. In other words, like if you had a $1,000 high credit on a credit card that's 5 years old and you charged $200 on it and you kept that balance, there will be point deductions, but they will not be as severe. That's at a 20% level as if you went out and you got a new card today and you were at, say, 10%. You only owed $100 on it. You will have more point deductions than you will for the older account at 20%.
I think what happens, too, is that, unfortunately, a lot of people think, I've got to, in a way of showing my love for my children and for family members, I've got to buy them everything on their Christmas list, everything that they want or have mentioned during the year that they would like to have. And as a result of that, people really do get in over their heads. And I guess a credit card is fine if you can pay it off when it comes due. Where you get in trouble is carrying that balance and having to pay a very high interest rate on that balance. And let's face it, that's where the credit card company, that they don't want you to pay off the balance. They want you to be able to pay those high interest rates. Why? Well, that's where they make their money.
Well, the holder, the one that's doing the actual bank behind the card, even the department store cards, they don't want you to pay it off because obviously they're going to make more money on you. The store wants you to pay it off because they want you to come by and buy more stuff. And so, they're pushing their products by putting you further in debt. And sometimes it's better to just try to save your money and then go out and buy all these things that you feel like you have to buy to make yourself feel better. People buy things for people to make themselves feel better. They don't buy it to make the other people feel better. People also buy things because they want to receive things back in return. But the stores, Gary, they're hoping they'll charge them up because obviously they're in retail and they're looking to sell their products and stuff that they have there without any regards whatsoever for the consumer who's using their card or applying. You'll see a lot of signs, Gary, that are going to say, go ahead and apply today, and you can not only get 20% off today, but you'll get some rewards so you can come back and buy something from us again, in 60 days.
I think the other thing that has happened in the past decade is that more people are buying product online, and they're not even having to leave their home to get what seemingly looks to be real bargains. It's not at all unusual to see retailers offering products 30, 40, 50% off regular price. The problem is you have to be a pretty savvy shopper to know, is that 40% truly 40% off a regular price, or is it 40% off a hyped up price that when you take that 40% off, it's pretty close to what the price of that product normally is. Now, there are apps that you can download that will pretty much keep merchants honest and will let you know where you can get the best price on a product.
You sure can, and I think those are great apps. I guess we've got to build that app that's going to tell a person these are the places that you shouldn't apply to get credit because these are the things that are going to happen. So I guess you just gave me a new product, Gary. We need to have an app that says, okay, go in and scan this store. Stay out of this store. Do not apply to get this credit because this is what's going to happen for you. The deal is just not a deal. Because even if it is a deal, if you get 20% off, which may not be a true 20%, but then you wind up spending another $100 in interest on that, then what have you really saved? You haven't saved anything. You wind up paying more for it than having the sale at all.
And I can imagine, but I would hate to live this way where you spend the entire year paying off last year's Christmas debt. I mean, what a hell of a way to live.
Gary, I deal with people that are paying off 3 years ago Christmas debt. They're still trying to pay it. A lot of people last year went out and spent and used credit and saw these credit card offers, and because online is so available, people spend more time online looking for bargains than they do spending time with their family. The computer, the internet, your phone, everything has just got the whole world spending hours instead of just sitting back. You and I talked about it earlier. I've got older children, but I've got younger children, and my 3-year-old daughter, she's like, what would you like to have, if I had to go get you some? She said, Daddy, get another book. I said, why would you want a book? She said, because then it gives me at least an hour every day for you to sit and read to me. So she's already figured it out at 3 years old. This is a good way to have daddy time. because I won't say no to her to read her a book. I'll stop whatever I'm doing and we'll read.
And see, she has figured out, and I think most kids, when asked what would you like to have, they would like more time with their parents, because in almost every instant today where there are two parents in the home, both are working, and kids do feel slighted on time with mom and dad. And it's a commodity. I mean, you know, when I was a kid growing up, almost every kid had a meal with their parents. That's not the case today. The overwhelming majority of kids today, Rusty, don't sit down at a family meal. It's a big deal when all family members are present for a meal.
I think it's the families that are able to do that, then the children wind up doing better in school. They wind up doing better in marriages. They spend that time, and that's our obligation. You know, right now there are so many programs, and you know, and I'm not going to sit here and pitch my stuff today. You know, my mind's on Thanksgiving and feeding a whole bunch of people and stuff. My mindset is this: if you can educate your children, even in the credit stuff, with all the technology that's out there, the systems, the programs, even if you have to do it at the dinner table, then you're gonna prevent the terrible things that are going to happen to them as they become adults, just like we fall into it. You know, if I sit down and I tell my child, look, when you get 18 years old and you go into a store and you want something, if you don't have the money, then you don't buy it. You don't go and apply for credit just to buy that particular item, because you may wind up paying that item off. It may be a small ticket, but if you don't go back and use that and your card stays dormant, you'll actually lose points from your credit score. So why open something if you're going to have to be forced to continuously use it every 6 months to buy stuff? It's a trick. Just let it alone. Walk away.
Well, there's a mindset, too, in the way in which you raise your children, that by God, you can't have everything that you want. I mean, even if you have the resources to provide everything that your child wants, I think it's bad parenting to give your child everything they want. I'm not saying that you're being mean. That's not the reality of life. You ain't always going to get your way, Rusty. You're not always going to get everything that you want. It ain't going to be one rosy day after another.
Well, it's not biblical either, Gary, but, you know, you got to watch what you ask for and what you want, because there are prices to pay for it, and we get enticed from it. You know, you see that this person has this type of TV, this person has this, they have this type of car, they have those type of things. And there's nothing wrong, Gary. Listen, let me tell you something. You work hard. What you do with your money is your business, but you never want to put yourself in a position to where once you need your credit to be able to have a good rating if you want to buy your first home, or rates go well on refinancing. Listen, Gary, there's some credit unions that are out there that offer a special rate of financing to start with for people to buy an automobile. But if your credit score improves over a 12-month period of time, they will actually reduce what you're having to pay. So they give them that incentive. Don't go out and get crazy. Here's the loan. Now we're going to make it better. I would like to see a lot of companies do that. But those companies are working off of the sweat of the people that go out there to, you know, get their credit cards and get their loans and get them at whatever ridiculous price they have to pay just to say they have it. And that's just not worth it.
One of the guys that is one of my financial heroes is a guy by the name of Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett's done pretty well for himself. He's made approximately $47 billion. That's with a B. That's more than the average type bear. Warren lives in the same home that he's lived in for 42 years and drives a car that he's driven now for 12 years, a 12-year-old Buick. He lives in Nebraska, in Omaha. He is the second richest man in America. 2 years ago, he held a news conference and he said, I'm pretty good at making money, but I'm not really very good at spending money. And, my friend Bill Gates and his wife, they're really good at spending money. They have formed a foundation to, eliminate various diseases throughout the world, malaria being one of them. And so I've called this news conference to announce that I'm going to give $42 billion to the Gates Foundation because I feel they can make better use of my money than I could. Bill Gates and his wife realized that the best thing they could do with their money is not hoard it or buy stuff, but to give it away. And Warren Buffett lives a very modest life, quite frankly, in Omaha, Nebraska, because that's where he's comfortable. Gets up every morning, walks to the same drugstore, and orders breakfast at the same drugstore every day, and is very approachable. He's never let his wealth change his lifestyle or his standard of living, or his morals, for that matter.
Well, and that's true, and that's because, the Buffetts and the Gates and these people, they make their money from us. We buy their products. We buy their insurance. We work through their financing. We buy their computer programming. We buy those things from them so they understand where it comes from. And I'm not saying that the banks that issue credit cards are just money mongrels and stuff. They're people too, just like you and I that work for a living, and they're trying to put their products out so that way the people that manufacture their products are making money, and all that stuff goes around. But there's got to be a time to where it makes it where the person that's going out there to shop would be in a position financially, or they just walk away. They just walk away. But we're stuck in a credit world. We're stuck by those three numbers. And those three numbers to me are I can't say useless, but they are to a degree useless, but they're a necessity now in order to get financing. But the scores that are being put out there are not correct because the credit data is not correct. And that's an epidemic that I don't think that even Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or these other humanitarians will ever be able to solve and fix. Our credit data is going to be wrong. Our credit score is going to be wrong. We're going to be put into positions to where we're paying different rates, higher rates, or not getting the credit that we actually need in order to keep ourselves at a certain budget. It's just not going to happen, not in our lifetime.
No, and it does control our entire life. I grew up in a time where my parents were Depression kids. My dad's philosophy was twofold that I've never forgotten. One was, if you have to ask how much something costs, you can't afford it. His second was, if you don't have money in your pocket to buy whatever it is you want, you don't buy it. The only credit card my dad ever had was a Gulf Oil credit card because his accountant said, John, you've got to be able to prove to the government you're spending X number of dollars in gasoline. You have to have a record of that. And the only way you can do that is by having a credit card that shows where you purchased your gas and how much gas you were buying. That's the only credit card my dad ever had. And I can see him doing this right now. My dad's been dead for 30 years. He'd open up the mail, take that credit card bill, go over to our desk and write a check and send that sucker out immediately. As soon as the bill came in, he'd write a check for that Gulf Oil credit card bill and send it off. That's how we did business.
And that's the way you're supposed to do it, because the system today with credit scoring, even though the scores and stuff aren't right, Gary, it's better than the old system to where you had credit data out there and they looked at how many people did you pay versus how many people you didn't pay. and they couldn't really measure it because that data wasn't always correct. And so at least with the score, it does give us some sort of an indicator of where you kind of fit in based upon millions and millions of other people that may have the similar type of accounts, the similar type of age, balances, and so on and so on. But we're not going to be in that era to where, I remember you just talked about golf. Golf was the very first credit card I had as a teenager, and for gas, so I could get back and forth from Georgia to North Carolina from when I was going to college. And it's changed. I mean, golf back then, Gary, I don't know if you know it or not, but you could actually use the golf card to stay at a Holiday Inn. They had made it where it was available.
I hadn't thought about that, but I do recall that. Certainly do.
They sure do. Now I'm telling my age inside how things go. My kids say, Dad, were you there when they made the first credit card in 1958? And I'm like, well, I was born in 58, and that's when the credit cards with Diners Club and stuff happened, but I certainly didn't have it issued to me. But that's when Fair Isaac put things together. So, we talk about credit scoring and we talk about
just
credit.
let me interrupt long enough to say this though. But one thing that we did get when we graduated from college, whether we wanted it or not, I know this happened to you, by God, I didn't apply for credit. Credit cards were sent to me. Congratulations, Gary Posick. And what I got then in the mail were credit cards. I got a Visa card. I got a MasterCard sent to me because I graduated from college. And I guess they figured, well, what the heck? This kid is graduated from college. He's going to be spending money. Here's a credit card.
Gary, I was a sophomore, and I got a credit card sent to me with a $500 credit line that I never applied for while I was going to school. And I took all of my friends to Buckhead, and I spent probably $3,000 that weekend.
Wow.
Going out, buying this and that on a $500 credit card, because the systems then didn't have it set up where it would stop you when you got over your limit. I didn't have a job. And so when that bill came in, it didn't come to me at school in Atlanta. It went to my parents' house in North Carolina. And what do you think happened to me? That kind of nicer car that I was driving was no longer available to me. And so I went to what I call a BMI, barely making it, and something that I could scrounge up to buy off a lot for $500. And the worst-looking car in the world. But that's what I had to do, because then I had to work extra hard in order to pay that credit card debt off. And I didn't think about it till a few years later, how many other kids get themselves in that position. And I promised myself I would never allow that to happen to my children. And so far I've been lucky, and my older children have great credit scores, and they haven't run into that problem.
But you did exactly what the credit card companies were hoping you would do. Take that credit card and run with it.
Oh, and I did. I ran with it, and we ran hard. I think I took the whole football team out, and we spent money. So, yeah, it's, but, that's how you get, that's how it started directing me into the credit industry. That was, over 34 years ago. And so you start learning and you do things, but it's still a learning process. The advantage that I have, that's what I do all day. Build programs, analyze data, understand where the strong points, the weak points. And I'm building a program now, Gary, built on our personality traits, where there'll be a questionnaire for people to fill out, and it will tell us the type of person they are, so we can build a plan to keep them grounded on what they're doing, so they don't run into these crazy problems that you keep telling people don't do, but they do it anyways because they want to keep up with their neighbors and everything else.
Well, a couple of points. Life is a learning experience for some people. It's not for all people. Some people are like a goose. Every day is a brand new day, and they don't remember anything from the day before. But if you do learn from your mistakes, and if you do, old habits die hard. And you're right. Some people, they're behind the 8 ball their entire life. They're always in debt. They're never out of debt. And who are they to blame? Well, they should look in the mirror. Their biggest offender is themselves.
Well, we are, but everybody puts the blame game out to everyone else, and it becomes about education. And instead of what we talked about in the earlier part of the interview is instead of just going out thinking the best thing to do is buy my kids a whole bunch of toys and this and that and get ourselves into debt, the thing is to spend more time educating them and saying these are the things that you got to watch out for. So when we go in the store, you know how they put those things right there at the register? You always got those little items that people reach and they pick out, and that's where they put the candy at, and that's where they want the kids to start grabbing out of the cart the candy while you're trying to pay for stuff. And that's where it all begins. When children are allowed to get that candy from being in that cart because they're starting to get a little bit anxious from being in the store for that long period of time, and you give them that candy and you give in, that's when you start giving in to the other things in the store. And then when you don't have the money, then you're going to use that plastic. And then when that plastic comes and they see mom and dad having to work more hours, they're having to get a second job, they see their car being repossessed from them, they see that now they're having to move into a different home, and it all starts at that counter. It starts when you give them that candy. I'm a firm believer of it.
I think you're absolutely right. And that's why it's at the checkout. You know, it's there for the kids. To whine and cry, and you have no intention of buying it, but you don't want to be embarrassed, so you buy it. One of the things this has nothing to do with what we talked about, but I want to brag on Rusty for a minute. In passing, he said, "Well, you know, I spend this day feeding some people." I don't want you to think he's talking about feeding his family. He's talking about feeding some 3,000 people tomorrow. People who are really the working poor, not just the people who are homeless, the working poor. And he comes from a small town, Gray, Georgia. But these are people who need a helping hand. And you don't ask any questions. You just provide the meals, and people show up. How many years you been doing this, Rusty?
I've been doing it 20 years. The last 2 years, with my mom being ill and being in the hospital, and last year we didn't know she was going to make it through Thanksgiving, and it was a miracle. So I wasn't able to do it, but she's at home now. Her health is still not great, but she turned around to me a few weeks ago and she said, "Are you going to do the Thanksgiving this year?" And I said, "You know, it's been a hard year, Mom." And she said, "Are you going to do the Thanksgiving thing this year?" Which means you're going to do the Thanksgiving thing this year. And I said, "You know what? I'm going to do the Thanksgiving thing this year. And I'm going to do what I did the very first year that I did this. I'm going to cook at least 95% of the food. And I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to work through the night. I'm going to have fun doing it, because then I will remember how important it is to give back." And the people that come in, Gary, they're not homeless people. It's just been a tough year on everybody. And so they're going to sit down and they're going to fellowship and they're going to meet their neighbors and they're going to talk to other people, because we don't get out and talk to anybody anymore. We're all stuck inside and we're always on the go. Or guess what? We're on the internet and we're shopping around and we're looking around for the deal. And we're just spending way too much time with that instead of with people. So I appreciate you bringing that up. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. When I get off the call here with you, I'm right back at it again. It takes, I got to cook, 500 pounds of dressing. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
Just out of curiosity, where do you cook 500 pounds of dressing? Certainly not in your kitchen.
Oh man, I got a big kitchen.
Well, what you do is truly the meaning of Thanksgiving, and I certainly admire what you do, and I thank you so much for coming and sharing on Health, Wealth, and Happiness.
You too.